Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all well. Okay, so my name's Les, as you've already been told. I'm from Fiasa. My background is network administration and security research. So I manage networks from 10 to 10,000 users. And the problems are very, very similar. Even though the scale's a lot larger, the problems are very, very similar. So we've seen that a lot. We've seen the aspects from that side. My colleague who's at the back over there, who's going to be hopefully assisting me in a little bit, Tony, is ex-police. He had 30 years police service, 8 of those in the high-tech crime unit. So he's seen it from the police side as well, from the police background. And what we're going to be talking about today is Wi-Fi security. And we're going to be talking about several aspects of it. We're going to have a couple of demos, hopefully. This is my travelling office that I take around. I don't think I've quite mastered mobile office workers yet, but we'll be giving some demos a little bit later on. Hopefully they'll all go okay. We just set it up so, you know, there's always the caveat that things might not go as expected, but we'll try and give a demo later on. I must say that because we know there's a whole range of people here, this is not going to be overly technical. If you're technical, if you want to talk tech, then please come find me later. I'm more than happy to talk geek all day long, so do come and speak to me about that. But this is going to be about the ways we need to approach security in terms of wireless networks. The first thing is, don't panic, Captain Mannering. We're okay. There is a tendency to, when we start talking about these things, panic and think, oh God, wireless networks, we shouldn't use them. If we talk about a particular topic in computing, it all gets very, very scary and it can sound like we're all doomed and that's the end of it. Let's just stay away from computers. What I urge you to do is put it into perspective. We're going to give you some solutions during this presentation as well. And I think just think of it like anything else. I'm not a bad flyer, but my fingers seem to have this evil gene that just before I'm about to go on holiday, they get the Sky remote and they put it to 500 and something, and I end up watching Air Crash Investigation about 2 days before I'm going away, and I start, oh my God, we're all going to die, and I get, start to really panic. But then I think, well, let's put this into perspective. There are dangers, but we just learn to deal with these things, and as long as I'm hurtling to the ground in an aeroplane at 500 miles an hour, if I do that, I'll be okay. So there's no problem there. But it's about putting these things into perspective. In the real world, we're street savvy. We know where to go, where not to go. 2 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to walk down certain streets. And it's exactly the same on the internet. Just be savvy about what you're doing, just be aware, and it's this raising awareness that hopefully will keep you one step ahead of the game and what's going on out there. So as was mentioned, this presentation is aimed at both companies and individuals, so I'm going to touch on both. You as an individual Wi-Fi user, and if you are providing Wi-Fi access to guests, to your clients of some form, just going to look at some of the aspects of that side of things. So we're going to talk about the concerns, and then, as I say, we should have some solutions where we can talk about how to protect yourself. At least for a starter for 10, you can start looking at these things. So the first thing, we've got to make sure that we understand the terminology, and we were at a customer's a few weeks ago, and we were talking about hotspots, and we're talking along that level, and they said after a bit, we've got to stop you, what is a hotspot? And they thought it was something quite rude. So we had to explain. And what a hotspot, we see this everywhere now. We see the term hotspot. Hotspot is normally a term given about a company or somewhere that's offering Wi-Fi access to people coming and going. So it's not a fixed company wireless access point where you've got all of the encryption and everything. Normally, it's some form of open network that you can come along to. You open up your laptop, you switch on your phone and it'll say, hey, free internet access here. And we see these scattered around a lot. If you go to a hotel, if you go to even a fast food joint or you're on the train, you see these adverts for Wi-Fi hotspot, either free or paid for access. You can jump on and check your email and start browsing the web, get on Facebook, Twitter, whatever you want to do. And that's great. It's really useful to be able to do these things because people can't live without internet access anymore. It's something that people get quite twitchy about if they haven't got net access. So they have their place, but you have to be aware of a few things with hotspots. A hotspot, great, it's something that's giving you access. Let's just stop and think about things. We've got lots of devices that connect to the internet now. We've got our traditional, the laptops, the computers that we're taking around and about. We've got our mobile phones. We've got our video conferencing, FaceTime, Skype, where we might want to talk to our friends, to our colleagues, and that's really, really useful as well. So we want to look for Wi-Fi because these things don't work over the 3G network normally. We've also got games machines. When we speak to hotels and guest houses, they say the amount of people now who turn up with their children with the games machines, with their little DSs or PSPs or whatever, and they want to play socially or talk to their friends. They all want some form of Wi-Fi access to be able to get to that. So I say, that's fine, use these things, but just be a smart user. Just think about these, because unfortunately, there are such things as fake hotspots. There are people who will set up fake hotspots to grab your connection, to be able to trick you in some way to connecting to that hotspot. And this is something that's been going on for quite a while, but it's increasing in the abilities of the hotspots, in the way that they attempt this. So, very simply, you go to a coffee shop and you get your coffee and you sit down, open up your laptop, and you see that there's a wireless network, hotspot, free Wi-Fi. And people go, oh yeah, this coffee shop's got Wi-Fi, I'll connect to it. Is it actually their hotspot that you're connecting to? That's the first step. Just speak to the staff and say, have you got a wireless hotspot here? If they say no, then there might be something up. But just check with them first of all. Just say, what's the name of your hotspot? What are you running? You know, just get some information about it. Don't just see a hotspot and think, great, there's a hotspot there. They're obviously giving me free access. I'll jump on that and off we go. So that's something that's been around for a long time. Somebody who lived by a coffee shop could quite easily set up a hotspot, call it something quite generic, and that worked pretty well. But things have moved on quite a bit. Now there are much cleverer pieces of software out there and the ability to actually fake hotspots that you've already connected to, your own wireless networks. What happens is it's possible to set up a system, and I've got something here that does this, that listens, because when you open up your laptop or you switch on your phone, it will look for the wireless networks you've been connected to in the past. It will say, oh great, yeah, well I'm going to have a look, see if any of these are here, because that's how wireless works. It says, network X, are you out there? Network B, are you out there? You're there, great, I'll connect to you. And that's really useful, it's a usability feature. You know, we don't want to have to go and connect manually to the same network over and over again. But unfortunately, what you can do is you can set up a system to listen for these little broadcasts. So I can listen to what your phones and your laptops are saying. So I can say, what are they looking for out there? And I can record that, and I can even then, within milliseconds, pretend to be that hotspot. Okay, so that's something that's, if I take over this is something that I've put together, a little package we've got, which creates a fake hotspot. And I've just switched it on this morning, probably about half an hour ago, and it's been listening to what people's phones and laptops have been looking for. If I scroll down, it's the oldest at the top, but you'll see the scale, first of all, of networks that people have been looking for. And if I scroll down to here, please don't shout out, don't confess, but if you have a look at some of those names, some of you might recognise some of them. It might be your home network, they might be your business network, a hotel you stayed at. You can see a whole variety. Somebody's been to a cafe recently. A few people got BT home hubs, Sky. We've got several different connections on there. So have a look at those and just have a think about that. So what this laptop will do is it will see someone looking for BT home hub, whatever, and it'll say, I'm BT home hub. And then you connect to it. So that's a problem because you're running a trusted network. You think that's looking good. Well, for a start, what I'd say is, as I said earlier, be a smart user. Look at the networks available before you just blindly connect to wireless networks. Look at what's out there. If you're sat here and you get out your phone and you see your home wireless network and you think, that's impressive, I don't normally get that range from my home wireless network. It doesn't normally make it through to the kitchen. Then just think about, there's something up, there's something not quite right. I've seen that before. We were running some demos in the back, and somebody said they opened up their network, and I said, I'm saying the same wireless networks here as in another presentation we did last week. I said, yeah, that's because that's listened to what your computer was looking for. It's gone and emulated those hotspots, and it's providing them back. So it's about looking, just if you get a sense of something's not quite right, something doesn't look as it normally should do, that network's not normally there, look out for these things. So just be savvy on that side of things. We'll talk a bit more about when you're using a hotspot, how to be a little bit safer a little bit later on, but that's something that you're welcome to come and have a look at. It's still going, it's still coming up with people. There's Blade Runner down the bottom there. It's a shot into the future somehow. So that's one thing. Look out for these things. Don't just blindly trust. Just because you're in an establishment that looks like it should have a hotspot, or that you know that they do have a hotspot, just make sure what they've got in place. If they say they charge for a hotspot and you connect and you suddenly get free access, don't think it's my lucky day. Just think, hang on a minute, let's just check this a little bit further. So that's my first tip. Moving on to the other side, if you're providing access for people, you have to be really aware of what you're doing when you're giving other people internet access through your connections. We'll start again at the basis. You hear the term IP address bandied around. Some of you will probably know what it is, understand the format of them. Other people will just know that there are IP addresses out there on the network. An IP address is a unique number on a network that corresponds to your computer or connection of some form. When everybody connects to the internet, they will be given an IP address, something like this, which that's the BBC's, one of the BBC's IP addresses, but it will be an IP that is traced directly back to your systems. The way I describe it, I think it's very easy to think of it just like a phone number. So we've got phone numbers, we're happy with those. This is an example, this is a taxi firm that I used to use when I worked somewhere, so I'm sure they won't be fussed with me advertising their number. But we've got a phone number, and we can understand certain things about that number if we understand the way phone numbers are put together. So the first thing is, there's always an assumed 0044 if it's a UK number. So that tells me that it's in Britain. The 1248 tells me the region that phone number's coming from. The 35 tells me the particular exchange within that building, within that region that it's connected to. And then the last 4 digits actually tell me the phone number, the premises, the customer who's connected to that. And it's very, very similar in terms of IP addresses. A part of it is the company, the overall company who owns that range of IPs, and then part of it will be you, your internet connection. And that's you, your unique connection to the internet. Nobody else can have that IP address on the internet at that point in time. We have a problem with IP addresses at the moment, that we're running out of them quite quickly. There are new systems in place, have been in place for a long time, which we're working towards. But the world has used a lot of IP addresses so far, and we haven't got enough to go around every device out there in its current format. So what we've come up with, the computing world, is these internal versus external addresses. And they are external addresses, addresses that exist on the internet, like the IP address I showed you. And then you have internal addresses, which will be the addresses connected to your local computers in your network, at your office place, in your home connection. And the best way to think about this is like a phone system in your house or in your business. You have a master socket, and then you have multiple phones connected to that master socket. And they're all sharing that one phone number. So if someone picks up one of those devices and makes a call, you do 1471, it's going to come from that main phone number. They're all sharing the same phone number. And that's exactly the same when you've got your home connection. You have a little device like this, some form of ADSL router, ADSL modem, and that has the external address, which is the IP address that is visible on the internet. All of the other devices behind that have these internal addresses, so they're just things known within your little network. But the important part is, we don't need to worry about that section, they all share the one IP address, the IP address that's traceable back to you. So we will return to that in just a second. Wireless versus wired. I'll show you a little picture of wired versus wireless connections on there. Wireless are fantastic. Wireless are really useful because you don't have to plug a cable in. So many people use them, even when they still sit at the same desk every day, and they could just have a cable because they're having to plug in their power cable and all the rest of it, but they still like wireless. There's something you should be aware of with wireless if you're not already. When you connect through a wired network, it's very specific. So let's say we're all computers on a network, and I want to send a message to you. I can send a message, and it'll be private. So it's the equivalent of writing something down, putting it in an envelope, and sending it to you. Only you read the message that's come to you. Nobody else sees it. That's great, nice and private. If we're on a wireless network, because it's radio waves floating around the air, we can't control those. So the equivalent is, instead of me handing you an envelope, I'm going, hello, how are you? Do you want to go for drinks? That's just been broadcast to everybody else. So everybody else can listen to that message at the same time and potentially do something with it. So that's something very important to be aware of. Wireless is a broadcast medium. So whereas a wired connection, as hassle as it is, having to plug in a cable, is very, very specific, it's very directional. Whereas wireless, you are broadcasting. So we need to think about those side of things. So, the concerns, as it says. First of all, an open network is open to everyone. Sounds obvious, but many workplaces of work, many hotels, guest houses, they'll say, we want to offer Wi-Fi access to all of our guests. We want to make it as easy as possible. We just want to make them connect and go on the internet without any problems. What do? We just leave the network open. We don't put a password on it. So they can just connect. Very, very simple. Well, that's good for the customer. You know, they're very, very easy to connect. They don't have to have any hassle with typing in any passwords or anything. But bear in mind, that is open to everybody. Everybody in the area. Somebody who sat outside in your car park, outside on the road in the middle of the night. If you've got an open network, that is a big risk. You're basically saying, hey, come and use my network. You can use encryption. We will talk about that in a second. There are different levels of encryption, but the way I always look at it is an open network is just like leaving your front door wide open when you go out for the day to work. You're just asking for someone to maybe connect to go, oh, let's have a look at that network. Potentially, they might want to do something illegal. They might want to just use all of your bandwidth so that you can't download anything. They might want to go out and download something themselves. So by leaving it open, just be aware you're leaving it up to absolutely everybody out there. Anybody can hop onto that and do what they want with it. So we have forms of encryption, and you've probably seen these little acronyms being mentioned many, many times. There's WEP, WPA, WPA2. WEP was the original wireless encryption protocol, and I would urge everybody not to use that anymore because it's definitely been surpassed, and you can crack WEP keys within matters of minutes. So it's the equivalent of, well, I won't leave my door wide open, but I'll put some sticky tape on the door, so I'll tape it shut. Somebody can just give it a good push and it will open. WPA and WPA2 is where you need to go if you're running a business network, if you're running some kind of network where there's going to be potentially critical data over it. If it's connected to the rest of your network, then I urge you WPA, WPA2. But once you've encrypted it, you do need to be aware that we can't just put up our feet and think, that's the end of it. We don't need to worry anymore. Because you've effectively locked the room. You've locked the doors in the room. This is our wireless network. We've locked the door, and nobody else can get in. Nobody who has some malicious intent can get in. What happens if the criminal's already here? I'm not looking at anybody, I'm not making any accusations, but what if the criminal's already in the room? They can listen to what I'm saying, poor things. They can start earwigging on what I'm chatting to everybody about because I'm broadcasting to everybody. I'm having a good chat, so they can start listening to that. So you need to be aware of actually who's on the network. If you're giving out wireless keys to people, be very careful about that. They've come to visit for a day. There you go, there's a wireless key. Do you ever change it after? Do you change it regularly? Just so someone can't come back the next week and connect to your network again. They're driving along, oh, I forgot to download that thing. I wanted to download that movie. So I wanted to watch in a hotel tonight. I'm going past that place I stayed in recently. I'll get on their network, I'll download it, and off I go. I've got my nice little movie for later on. The other side is consider, are your computers safe? Offering wireless access is really good for customers, and I don't want to put anybody off because it's something that people expect in hospitality industry now. I think people expect to have some form of wireless or internet access given to them. That's what people actively look for. Going back to everybody's got the devices, and we mustn't put anybody off that because I think it's great and it can give you a real competitive advantage if you have a quality internet connection. But if you've got your ADSL router that's connected to the internet, then you connect that, give everybody the wireless key, whatever connection, you're effectively joining everybody together on one big network. So this is my office computer or my office network, and I'm giving my guests access to that network. Now if someone comes in, okay, there's malicious activity, but there's also the chance that someone comes in with an infected laptop, something with a worm, with a virus on it, that love being connected to networks. Because what they'll do is, as soon as they see a network, they will attempt to spread to other computers on the network, and that happens very, very quickly. I've seen it on very, very large systems where thousands of computers have been infected within minutes because it will start talking to all of these computers and start infecting them. So you need to consider, if you're giving people access, even if they're your trusted guests and they look very, very friendly and they look nice and you know they've got family or whatever, you just need to be aware that you're actually just connecting them up to your network. They're connected to your computers. So there are methods, there are ways of separating your computers from the guest computers. And there's lots of different approaches to this. If you want to talk about that in more detail, if it's something that particularly interests you, we're going to be around at the end so you can come and have a chat with me and we can tell you the different solutions that you can look at. But there are ways of doing it. So again, it's just about being aware of these things. If you have got a network that you're giving people access to, your computers are on it, just have a think about that. Then we get on to the unfortunate misuse. So we've got the, I want to use your bandwidth, I want to connect with a virus-ridden laptop or whatever. We also have the issue of misuse. People do, shock horror, I hope you're ready for this, people do illegal things on the internet. Yes, we thought it was all nice and safe, but there are parts of the internet that have illegal material, there are people who do things illegally. And are they going to do that on their home connection, or are they going to do it when some kind person has given them access to their network? What are you going to do? Well, you're going to use someone else's. There's a whole variety of misuse, and I don't think I need to go into too much detail, but it borders from the seriously illegal stuff to the things like copyright theft, downloading of music, of movies. I'm sure you've seen many times that people get letters. You may well have experienced this if you run a business where you get a letter from solicitors saying you've been downloading Lady Gaga, so we want to charge you several £1,000s in fines, otherwise we'll take you to court. That's not a nice letter to get if you're a business. And what do? Do you just pay up, or do you face some kind of disruption in your business if they're going to carry out their threat and take it further? The problem is, with misuse or any of these activities, is we go back to our diagram at the beginning. Remember the single IP address that we're all sharing. If you've got a hotel or a guest house, if you haven't, just imagine a situation where you've got guests, other people coming in, and they use your phone system. They pick up a phone and they make a crank call to someone. Where BT are going to trace it back to? It's your phone number. That's why most phone systems will have some kind of logging in place. It's exactly the same system with the internet. If someone's doing something they shouldn't do, it will only ever be traced back to that level by your service provider. They will see the network traffic, the illegal activity coming from your IP address, the one that's connected to all of your computers, the shared IP. So you're the people that's going to get the knock on the door, unfortunately, if something's been going on, if somebody's been doing something they shouldn't have, you're the ones who are going to get the visit, and you're going to have to start coming up with some reasons why it isn't you. But, of course, that causes disruption. That causes upset. It's not nice to have people or letters arrive at your door when you're trying to run a business in hard times. You know, any concerns, any kind of accusations are definitely not what you want. So I encourage you to look at, if you're going to be offering wireless access to people, some form of monitoring, some way that you can track what people are doing. And there's solutions out there. If you look at the eCrime Wales website, there is a supplier list there, and you will see various suppliers who offer solutions for things like guest houses where they have logging and stuff. You recognise our name there, we're one of them. But you go and have a look at those, and you can see that there's solutions out there to log this information, just like a phone system. So that if someone comes knocking on your door and say, someone was downloading Lady Gaga 2 weeks ago, 3 months ago, you can go, let's have a look at the logs. Actually, it was the person staying in room 5 at the time who was downloading that. And then, you know, you've got a bit more information, you've got a bit more evidence to be able to track things back. If you start controlling the network and make people aware of it, it's a bit like the fake burglar alarm, isn't it? You know, at least you're putting people off for a very start. If you start talking to people and saying, well, we've got a managed system here, they're going to think twice before maybe abusing it. Because they say, well, I won't risk this one, I'll go to the next person who's just happily giving out their Wi-Fi key to everyone. There was somewhere recently where they had big signs up, nice big signs saying, Wi-Fi access available, this is the key, to everybody who came in, and he obviously didn't change that often at all. So you just give them Wi-Fi access to everybody who's ever stayed there. Okay, so we've got some solutions, hopefully. We're going to give you a couple of demos. First of all, I mentioned the encryption. Just this is a starter. I can't tell you how to encrypt every wireless network out there because there's lots of different makes, manufacturers, but I just want to give you a pointer because people don't think about these things, they're maybe not so aware of how it works. First of all, if you've got something like this, not just BT, this is all over the world companies do this, but you will see things like, I know it's not quite clear here, BT Home Hub, dash, and then a series of numbers. That's your broadcast ID that everybody will see and you connect to that. I urge you to change that because every now and again, someone will work out how that corresponds to the wireless key underneath. There'll be an algorithm associated with it. So whoever's making these little routers will use these numbers to generate this little wireless key underneath. And they will come out with the app. I was looking last night, actually, when we were talking. We were in the bar, and maybe it's sad, but I was looking on my phone at the latest apps on these things, and there was one for Italy, where you just go around and it scans for these networks, the equivalent over there, and it calculates the wireless key for you on the fly. And then you can connect straight away. So the first thing is change that, and also change your wireless key underneath. Change it to something else. Okay, it's maybe hassle because you've got a few devices connected to it, but it's worth it. If you're going with the defaults, really change it. It's just a simple step, but it's something that will at least put people off. If nothing else, it's social engineering. I know that you've got a BT Home Hub, so I can pretend I'm from BT and try and manipulate you in some way. Interestingly, when we were running a test of the software I showed you, scanning for networks, we saw one really great one, worrying one, where someone was trying to connect to what we assume was their home network, and the broadcast ID was their phone number. Think what you could do with that in terms of social engineering. You could phone them up, that's giving you a lot of information out there. So that's the first step. Next thing is please change the default passwords. on these things, because if I know it's a BT home hub, I'll be able to know what the default username and password are for those. You get the box, really excited, we're going to get net access, you plug it in and it works, and that's what they're designed to do. They're nice and easy, so they don't have to support you, they don't have to worry about it. There will be somewhere in the documentation that says, please change the password, but you're so excited, you're going to get on Facebook and check out what everybody's been doing, what everybody's been having for tea last night. That, I'll do that later, and maybe never get round to it. So think about that. Go to your router and change the default password, because otherwise you're just letting someone in very, very easily. You get in, and then the attacker locks you out as the owner because they changed the password, and then they can start controlling what you're doing. So just simple steps, just don't make yourself a big target. Just try and move away from that. There's always going to be people who are targets. If you can be one who isn't, then, in terms of numbers, hopefully they'll move on to someone else. So we have a couple of demos. The first one I'm going to show you here is just, as I say, the different routers, different makes are all very different in the way they look, but there's a certain pattern to wireless routers in some form. You will have somewhere, you'll have in your information pack details of how to connect to it, and it's normally through a web browser. So you will normally connect to something that looks a bit like this, 192.168.0.1, 192.168.1. And you probably recognise that first bit. You've maybe seen that on your home connection. Remember when I was talking about internal versus external network addresses? Those are worldwide known as internal addresses that are used purely for internal networks. So they're a commonality between all networks that you see out there. So what I've done is I've gone to that address in my web browser, and I've logged in first, I've changed the default password, I've been very good, and I've logged into a control panel, which, the options might be, excuse me if I just bend down here, the options might be up there, they may be down the side, but the first thing to look for is something like wireless security. There'll be a tab there somewhere, wireless security. There we go. It's logged me out, that's very good. It will have timed out, which is a good one. So we've got our demo router, which is our broadcast SSID. So that's the thing that's broadcasting around saying, hey, I'm network demo router. I exist here, come and connect to me. So that's, first of all, what you want to change. Don't change it to your company name. Unless you're a guest house setting up a hotspot, that's slightly different. But if you've got your own internal wireless network, don't set it up as the company name, don't set it up as your name, because you're giving attackers some information. They want to potentially infiltrate your company, then big beacon saying this is our network is not going to go down well for your company. So just change it to something that sounds really quite random or quite boring, quite generic. Boring router or something like that. No, that might intrigue people too much. The other things, you wouldn't worry about this too much. These are some other settings. What you're looking for in terms of wireless settings, it may be in a security tab on its own, is, in this case, we've got an open router. Oh dear. So what we want to do is we want to select one of these and type in a key. I mentioned WPA, so I'm going to click on that, and then you just type in your passphrase there. As you'll see, it wants it to be anywhere between 8 to 63 characters. If you can remember 63 characters, that's brilliant, because that's really secure. But at least make it 8, and make it random, or at least pseudo-random characters, numbers. Don't make it words, because it's very easy to break those. You can do things called dictionary attacks, where you get the words from the dictionary and you just try them over and over again until you get to the right set of words or combination of words and letters. So make it something unique, something including, just like passwords, uppercase, lowercase characters, numbers, something that someone can't easily guess. Now most devices will remember that key once you put it in the first time, so it's not like you're going to have to be typing it in every time. Once you've gone around and added every device, then you're connected then and you should be okay, so it shouldn't be too much hassle with that. But that's your first step. So you go in, change the default password, and then add some kind of security key on that network. That's your first step to at least make you less vulnerable than just connecting in, and it works really, really nicely because everything's set up as a default setting. Whenever you're doing security in terms of computers, you've got to think about this with the level head. What are you protecting? Because some people go out there and say, oh God, I've got to spend tens of thousands of pounds securing my network. Well, put it into perspective. What are you going to lose if someone does attack you? If you've got a system and you work out that it's only going to cost your business a couple of £100, there's no sensitive data on there, it's just going to cause a bit of hassle to your company if something goes wrong, then get a solution that corresponds to that. Don't go out and spend tens of thousands of pounds on it because it's just overkill. It's all about putting it into perspective. If you are guarding government secrets and you've got so many personal details on there that if it got out you would be fined so heavily it would put you out of business, then you need to start looking at harder forms of security systems of some kind of connection in there. So just think about that. Be level-headed about it. As I said, on the user side, be street savvy, be net savvy. When you're buying solutions, when you're looking at solutions, just look at them with a level head. What you're trying to protect, what's important to protect. Whenever you're giving people access through your network, you should make them agree, sign up to an acceptable use policy, an AUP. This is something that can be booklet size or it can be a page long, depends on how detailed you want to go on these things. But it basically should be something that says you're connecting to our network, don't do anything silly. Don't do anything illegal. If you've got some kind of monitoring, we're monitoring you. We're watching you. You know, maybe not that quite harsh if somebody's just come to stay with you for a week and they get that straight away. But just make people aware of what your network's about. It's our network. We reserve the right to monitor it if we want. And we will come after you in some form if we find you have done something illegal with it. It just shows that you're a bit more savvy about what you're providing, that you're aware of the issues. It makes people aware of these problems, and it's just a binding way of being able to get people to sign up to something. If you go to eCrime Wales website, there is examples, AUPs on there, so you can go and download those and use them as a starter and just reformat them, put your own names in there and make them relevant to you. But that's a great first step. Get people to sign up for them. If you're running a business with staff, get them to sign up to acceptable use policies. If you haven't, there's a whole world of employment law that opens up to you if they've been doing something wrong and you get upset with them. If they've not been told, it sounds ridiculous. In the world of computing, there's a few odd things like this, but if they haven't been told not to do it, then the court will quite often side on their side. They will look favourably on them. They didn't tell me I couldn't go on that site. Well, did I tell you did I make you sign up an acceptable use policy that said you couldn't punch your colleague when he got annoying? You know, but it's the same thing. It's common sense, but for some reason it's viewed as you need to tell people acceptable use policies. This is what you can and cannot do. You can't go on these sites. When you're a hotspot user, apologise, this might look a little bit small on there. When you're connecting to someone else's network, when you're connecting to an unencrypted network, always use secure connections where possible. And what I was saying, I'm broadcasting. Hey, I'm connecting to Barclays Bank. Hey, this is my username. This is my password. This is what I've got in my account. Yeah, thankfully, they force some kind of security, but that's what you're doing on a wireless network. So where possible, wherever you can, if you're visiting a website, type in before, and if they do offer it, HTTPS. Look out for the HTTPS. That is a secure connection to the computer you're looking at. So there is some encryption going on between you and the endpoint. Twitter have got it, Facebook have got it, your banks should all have it. As a rule of thumb, if you go to a website and you're typing in personal details, financial details, anything that you think are sensitive, if it hasn't got HTTPS at the front of it, it's just HTTP, don't do it. Because potentially somebody's going to be there to look at it. Just in general, I would say, because even if you're on your home network, if you're putting in sensitive data, and they haven't got HTTPS, I think that just tells you a little bit about the company, about their approach to security. If they're not giving you a HTTP connection, a HTTPS connection, then just think about what that means in terms of the overall ramifications of what you're giving them. The other one is the security settings on email. Email clients are great these days. You type in your email address when you first run it and your password, and it goes off and it works out all the settings and it sets you up with an email account and you can get all your emails. Fortunately, some email clients and some service providers, whilst they will offer secure connections, they may not offer that by default. They may not set you up by default having a secure connection. Now, again, like the routers, this is different on every different email client, but if you have a look somewhere in your account settings, in your email client, look for something that says security settings, security, encryption. It will say something like that, and if it's on none, then try and change that to something like SSL.TLS, one of the options that are there. If it's none, that's not good. Just try one of the others, and that will give you a lot more security. I say, unless you're 100% confident in what you're connecting to, I said this before and someone said, I'm never 100% confident with computers. That's an interesting way of looking at it. Yes, that's true. But if you're not 100% confident about what you're connecting to, the network that you're using, just avoid using sensitive data. Wait until you get home, wait until you get to a network you trust. Does it make that much difference? Is it going to be that much of a difference if you don't buy that product? Yeah. So.
I have a secured network at home.
Yes.
But sometimes I log on and it says unsecured in the bottom, and that always makes me nervous. Why is it saying unsecured?
That could be, if it's popping up down the bottom, it could well be a wireless network that it's seeing. It might not be necessarily your network, it could be a neighbour's network that it's seeing that's unsecured. So what I would check is that your laptop isn't trying, or your computer isn't trying to connect to that network. Because again, it goes back to the user-friendly thing. Hey, I found a network, I'll connect to it. So have a look and just make sure that if you've got encryption, your neighbours have got it or someone nearby.
When that's happened before, I have double-checked to make sure.
Yes, yeah.
Network, and it has been.
Okay, that sounds interesting. It could be seeing something. It depends on your operating system, what it's. We can have a chat after, and I'll try and find out some more details, see if we can work out. But it could be that. That's one common thing that if someone else is running a wireless network. I've known people who realised they were connecting to their neighbours for 2 months because it was just connecting, and they hadn't realised it was picking that over their network. So we've got another demo, which hopefully will work. This one's the harder one to set up in this region. What we're going to do is we're going to try and emulate a wireless hotspot or a wireless network, and Tony is going to be our unsuspecting victim. Oh, I said that in wireless mode, so you've heard it now. But he's going to come to a wireless hotspot, and he's going to connect, and he's going to start hopefully sending an email. So what we're going to do is we will fire up this, hopefully. And if this goes all well, we have got a copy of it in case the setup here isn't quite right. Tony's hopefully going to connect and open up his email client. As I say, this sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. Always works just before, and then it doesn't work after. So, I've got... Oh, let's just check I'm connected to the right network. So, are you connected? There we go. There's something coming on there, I think. Or was that someone else? Okay, so what I'm running here is a little utility. This particular one's called Wireshark, but it's a utility that sits on a network, and it will look for what's going around the network. Now, on a wired network, normally it will only see, there are caveats to this, I'm afraid, but it will normally just see your traffic with the server or whatever else you're connecting to. On a wireless network, it sees a lot more because it hears everything that people are talking backwards and forwards to. So what I'm seeing here is every little communication that goes back and forwards between the wireless access point over there and the laptop that's over in the background, or anybody else who's connected to this particular network. So this is running on here. I can see here that we've got some requests going in, people looking for a mail server in our example. Can you just open up Outlook again, and we will see if this demo works. As I say, I tried it earlier on and I've saved it, so we've always got the backup. There we go. Okay, so we'll pause at that second. So Tony's just opened up Outlook and connected to a mail server. We've got a mock mail server running there, and I've just listened to that. So if I come back up here, this connection here, IMAP, you'll probably recognise IMAP. That's Tony's email client connecting to the IMAP server. If I scroll over here, I can see, oh, there's a login going on, and I can see his username. If I scroll over to the side, I can see he's got a silly password, namely silly password. And that's just what we term sniffed it from the air. That's just gone through the connection. That could be like a wireless hotspot. That's going unencrypted, so I've just listened to that. And I've just seen some information. I've seen that he's logged in and he's connected. And if I search through some of these connections, I can see that I can get various stats about, let's see if I can just trim this down a little bit. Hopefully that will trim it down a little bit. I'll be able to see various information about the email client that he's getting. I can see how many read emails, how many unread emails he's got. And I believe he's just sent me an email. So I've just seen the email whiz past as well. And this is it. Mail from Tony to Les at eCrime event. If I go and follow this stream of data, I can see something. I can start seeing the email that he's just sent to me. Let's see if I go down here. Can you try sending another one, just so I can grab that one? Hopefully, you'll see another one coming back. But I can see some information about what he's sending to me. Now, we will hopefully see another one. We could potentially see the password flying past again. There is a bit of delay on this when it's sniffing through all the bits and pieces. But what I'd be able to do is, if this had some content, if it had an attachment, I can go in and I can grab that data, I can see the contents of the email, and I can save the attachments potentially. I can get all of the information from there. Okay, so we're going to be around until the end, so if you want to come and speak to us about anything later on, ask any more questions, talk tech or whatever, then come and find us at the end. Okay, thanks very much. Thank you.